Freemasons are the builders who rejected the cornerstone. Are Freemasons Christ-centered? How could you be Christ-centered when you were giving the name of Baal in the 17th or 18th degree? Whenever you're getting your Royal Arch degree, that's when you learn the name of God. And the name of God is obviously the God of the Egyptians, Syrians, Babylonians. Well, that wasn't Christ. That wasn't the Lord of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That was Baal. The Freemasons are practicing the continuation of the worship of the sun, moon, and stars that was learned from the Watchers, the angels of Genesis 6:4 before the flood. I don't necessarily know if it's the sun, the moon, and the stars. I can say for sure, though, from what we've seen, it's definitely the worship of the sun. But when I see those two pillars, the two pillars do denote the sun, the moon, and we see the 7 stars associated with the Pleiades where the moon was. Their knowledge was preserved through the flood on 2 pillars crafted by Tubal Cain. My opinion? No, it's on their website. It's on the Grand Lodge of Iowa, and we can find it in their oldest text by M.S. Cook. So we talked about the builders, right? The builders were the Masons. But at the same time, the Masons weren't being talked about in the book of Matthew. So who were the builders that Jesus was speaking to in Matthew 21? Matthew 21, 45 to 46, the parable of the wicked tenants. Look, it calls them wicked tenants. That's who the builders were. When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they knew that Jesus was speaking about them. So who were the individuals that were called the builders? They were the Pharisees. The Pharisees and chief priests, those were the builders. They weren't Masons, but obviously the ideology that the Pharisees had. Remember, they rejected Christ. They must have had another religion. If they don't accept the Messiah when the Messiah comes, that means they must have a different idea. So we can see that the builders, they go all the way back to who? Cain. And what do we know about Cain? Cain was a murderer, and he was a liar. Okay, so I guess that's what we can look at when we see the 2 pillars. One side can lie to you. The one side is destructive. They're killers. So when the chief priests and Pharisees heard his parables, whose parables? Christ's, they knew that Jesus was speaking about them. Although they wanted to arrest him, they were afraid of the crowds because the people regarded him as a prophet. So we found out later this group led to his crucifixion. On what charge? Was it a good charge? No, it was false charges. So what were the Pharisees doing? They took him into the Sanhedrin. What's the Sanhedrin? It's the courts. Didn't we see that Nimrod, who is Orion, also has a connection to the courts? The judge, right? The guy that holds the hammer. You understand why they're wicked tenants now? The Pharisees lied. The Pharisees pretended like he did something wrong. Christ was crucified over literally nothing. He said, if you say so. That was his remark. If you say so. So who are the Pharisees? You can see them today in Israel. Today we have the Israel Supreme Court. They have a lot of influence outside of Israel, but we studied and we already saw. On top of the Israel Supreme Court, what do we have? Well, the all-seeing eye, the pyramid with the eye in it. The pyramid, that's right, it came from Egypt. And if we take a look at this image in the center, this image came from Iran. Is there a connection between Iran and Egypt? Yes. The religion that was in Babylon also made its way into Egypt and India. So notice here, the index finger is raised. Now you're thinking, oh, this guy's just pointing up. It's all about context. If you start to watch this and actually understand what's going on the world stage, and you're not so naive, you'll see when people are passing symbols back and forth. So here we notice, in this picture in the center, do you see 2 pillars? I see 2 pillars. So we had a pillar that went all the way back to